Hello and welcome to the first Bristol Sport Christmas dinner, a chance for us to gather our stable of sports around the festive table and reflect on the season so far. And I'm pleased to say joining me this evening, Steve Cottrell and Keith Burt from Bristol City, Andreas Kapoulas from the Bristol Flyers basketball team, Andy Robinson and Sean Holley from Bristol Rugby. And what a year, what a season so far it's been. Andreas, you've masterminded the transition from amateur to professional as Bristol has its first professional basketball team here in the city playing in the BBL. And Andy and Sean, it's been a momentous year really with Bristol Rugby, that move from the Memorial Ground down to Ashley Gate. All going well so far, fingers crossed. And Steve and Keith, well, what a difference 12 months makes, eh?
Well, I think that, you know, sometimes when you come into a football club, it's a good idea to come in when you're actually at rock bottom or almost at rock bottom. I mean, the one thing we mustn't overlook here is we weren't bottom when I came in, but a week later we were. So we actually went to the bottom of the table, and I remember speaking to the players afterwards and said, look, you know, the only way we can go now is up. So I think the confidence-wise, what I saw in training was completely opposite to what I saw when they went into the arena on match days, which is not what you want. So we managed then to get a couple of results, a little bit of confidence going, and with the loan players that we brought in, we managed to see the season out. I'm looking forward into this one. You know, the recruitment was hard in the summer, wasn't it? There was a fair bit of work that was put in by myself and Keith, meeting players. But obviously, having the finances of Steve Lansdowne behind us to be able to acquire these players. Because not every club in League One could have done that. We would have put a side together. We would have put a really good competitive side together. But they wouldn't have been as young as what they are now. So I think what we've done is we've bought youth. That's what we have done. We could have put a side together probably as good on free transfers, but they wouldn't have been of the average age of 23, 24, 25 of the whole group now, including Aaron and Wade, who are 35. So I think it's been a team effort really all round.
Well, you've talked about the finances and the influx of players, and certainly, I mean, Andy and Sean, you would come in on this in terms of it's been a dramatic change in terms of the squad and the change of players. How difficult has that been to adjust to that and bring those players in and get them motivated in the championship once again?
Well, it's vital you bring the right type of player in, and you know, we meet all the players that we sign, and part of the understanding for them is that we are currently in the championship. We aspire to be in the Premiership, and we aspire to be a top four side in the Premiership, and that's the dream that these players are coming in and buying into, and it's about getting the right balance. You know, we've signed experienced players. We've signed experienced players because we believe that will help us get up, but also working with our younger players that we have. And we have a number of good young academy players that have come through the Bristol system and are playing well for us in the first team. And we felt that we needed that experience and leadership coming into our squad.
So it's creating that blend. I mean, Steve's talked about an average age and that you're quite young effectively for where you are. In terms of rugby and basketball, you're still you say you've brought a few wiser heads in, but you're still quite a young squad in terms of the development.
Well, I think it's important to get a balance, isn't it? I think the guys we have brought in, much like, you know, Steve was able to do with the backing of Steve Lansdowne, have been, you know, proven, seasoned internationals, and you know, it's not just Welsh guys, by the way. You know, but we're lucky to have been backed to get the likes of Ryan Jones, Dwayne Peel, Ian Evans was a massive coup for us as a 29-year-old second row in the prime of his career. But we've also brought in, you know, different flavour in terms of Samoans. So, you know, David Lemmy, a past Bristol player, very experienced. But people like Anthony Perenisi and Jack Lamb are still young enough, and Ian Evans still young enough to be in the sort of prime, and hopefully, you know, go into a place with us at the right age. And I think that's important to get a spread in our sport. It's such a contact sport, and you need that influence of experience and leadership. And it rubs off on the younger players. And ironically, a lot of our younger players are Bristol players. You know, they are from the locality, and Mitch Sheedy and Ellis Genge, Augie Slovic. And it's important to have these guys around them because, you know, when Andy's come in and I've come in, we weren't able to have that sort of calibre player available to us when people like Sam Bassetti and Hobson had retired. So
We've lost 2 games in this year,
yeah,
and they're the 2 playoff games. And one of the reasons why we lost it was because of our lack of leadership in those games. Talented players were playing, but we just didn't have the leadership to guide us through. So that is the challenge for us, is to make sure that we have that leadership on the field, we have our players fully fit, and we can win the last 4 games of the season.
Yeah, and that's a challenge for all of you as coaches, to have those players that stand up and be counted in those moments. I mean, Andreas, I know you've had the nightmare scenario of your star player, star summer signing, being injured and now out for the rest of the season. How hard is it? I mean, all of you suffer the same quandaries, if you like, when it happens.
You know, obviously, Doug Herring getting injured, it was not something we were expecting. But I think with those type of things, is you've got to control the factors that you can. You're going to control the controllable. So, unfortunately, the injury has happened, and but at the same time, we've got to move forward as a group. So, he has been influential, especially being in our first year in the league. He brought leadership. He brought his creating ability, his scoring ability. But now the team has to respond, and I think guys had to step up, and they have done that, which is really good to see over the last couple of weeks. But it's not that at the end of the day, it's not about covering what he's leaving behind, because he's a very talented individual. It's about how can you get the team chemistry, and how can you put together and go back to the same level that you were playing before, but maybe by adapting some things within the system that we already do, but also players obviously stepping up and taking responsibility. So, injuries are part of the game, and I think, in all sports, and kind of you've got to have those. And I think it's how you've got to deal with that, with adversity, and how you've got to move forward. And I think that's what we're focusing on.
Steve, you're nodding sagely there. I guess the last few weeks with Wade as well, having a player suddenly not at your disposal is something that all of you face.
Yeah, I mean, we'll all have a dilemma about it, and as much as what Andreas says there, and what he says is exactly right. Sometimes when you take the best player out of your team, you can't replace him unless all of a sudden you can go out and there's a transfer window and you can actually replace him, which is highly unlikely for any of us now. So what you do want is you want others to step up to the plate. But going back to when we were talking originally then about a blend of experience, that's when you want those experienced players to come to the fore, not just for what they can give, but what advice they can give to the others. So those experienced players are key. And when Andy said then about having those experienced players to get you where you want to go, so that there's part of a short-term plan there. So we all have long-term plans, but without a short-term, you'll never get the long one.
Well, I believe the hardest step for Bristol Rugby is to get promoted to the Premiership.
Not the hardest step to stay up, but to actually
No,
get promoted.
to actually get to negotiate our way through the playoffs.
And it is a weird setup. I mean, you guys wouldn't be familiar with that style. I mean, it's kind of unique, isn't it, in an awful kind of way, in that it almost doesn't matter. There is a view that within the football world that if you perform really well over a season, the best teams will eventually be rewarded and the worst teams will probably be relegated.
It begs belief, really, doesn't it? It's not like we are one hit or trying to be one hit wonders. There's a sustainable model here from all of us to try and inject enthusiasm, ambition into the city and to young people to play sport. And the only way you can do that is by playing the highest level, because they emulate, they like their role models, their idols. And we saw last year, okay, we didn't go up, but the other ridiculous scenario for us is that, take London Welsh last year, they went up. You've only got a month or two to then recruit better players to play at that level, and they can't cope. They've changed 24 players. So maybe it would have been a bit of a blessing in disguise that we didn't go up last year, because we were able to recruit, luckily, build slowly, we'll get gelling together.
We're stronger in the league
we're moving along, so maybe in the long run, touch wood, it might be a bit of a blessing.
But you've already mentioned that it's that difficulty that you've overcome to a certain extent in terms of, and all of you have, in attracting the best players and the people to Bristol. And a lot of this does come back to Steve Lansdown's vision that I'm sure all of you are very focused on, that idea of not just promoting sport in terms of you're playing in the very highest league that you can all respectively play in, but also providing those role models and those inspirational people to actually get this city active, because it has underperformed for so many years.
Yeah, and this is something that we're aspiring. This is where we're aspiring to get to as well. You know, we're in our first year in professional basketball, so you know we have a long way. And I think all that kind of aspect of the support, I think this is what we want to build. And it's a process. You know, it's kind of short term versus long term. You know, Steve talked about it. In the short term, we've got to kind of. It's a year of discovery for us. We're finding out a lot of things of how we're going to. Prepare ourselves to be successful long term, and I think that's what and I think that's what the great thing about Bristol Sport and Stephen Lansdowne. It's not about kind of short term success. I think it's about long term success, and this is what we're all aspiring. So the planning process and kind of utilizing young players and you know that kind of support mechanism that we have, I think it's very important moving forward. And for our sport, yeah, there's no question about that. And I think it's the long term vision.
Your challenge was to start well. And you had to get your squad together to really start well and perform, and you're working off that now, being top of the table, and it's sort of the way that the whole squad is working together to stay there. For us, doesn't matter how well we started, really. It's important that we we were ticking on, but the key is for us to really perform well at the end of the season. Yeah. So we've got to be really hitting our peak then. So then that will enable us to go up.
So how do you ensure doing that? Because A, it's a long season, you've got a lot of players to manage, but also you've got to bring them back together at the very end of the season.
So we rotate the squad. So you keep keeping everybody fresh. You look at how we improve our skills, and the coaching team have been fantastic in the way they've developed the skills of the players, and the players buying into that. It's improving the S&C, and we're seeing gains. Midway through the season, we're still seeing really good gains from our players, and it's everybody buying into that to understand what the end of the season is all about. And I think culturally, it's a great squad that everybody has a part to play within the team, and I think that's what I enjoy seeing, that guys enjoy coming to work hard.
I think you get referees sometimes that they just don't want to talk to you.
So the amount of times I've said to a fourth official, I feel sorry for you today because you're doing all right, but he's having a nightmare.
When you do your substitution cards, you go, can I substitute the referee?
Yeah.
I used to know where those treetops listen and